our series of 10 minutes with ILPN interviews.
Yeah, well, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure. Could I ask you first to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Well, my name is Ulrike Schneider. I'm living in Vienna. I'm working at the Vienna University of Economics and Business Administration, WU. And, well, there I'm in charge of the Institute of Social Policy and the Research Institute for Economics of Aging.
So, if you were to explain to a lay person the work you do, how would you explain it?
Yeah, well, it's a mix of teaching and research obligations, like for other academics, and, well, some management involved as well. Not surprisingly, in terms of research, I'm very much interested in long-term care. That's why I'm a member of this network, and also in social services market, not only services delivered to elderly people, but also to other age groups. Yeah. So it's the economics of these markets, how they work, funding, competition, quality that is being delivered, the role of different providers, these kind of things. And when looking at long-term care, we are very much into the analysis of informal caregiving, the nexus between informal caregiving to older people and employment, and also into costing care.
Thank you very much. You've mentioned long-term care, which is what we're talking about, and it can mean slightly different things in different places. So perhaps, can you briefly specify which services you're talking about, which client groups?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm usually following our law in this regard. So in Austria, you are considered in need of long-term care if you need help with personal care, so or with activities of daily living. So if you have any ADL deficiencies, just having difficulties in doing your shopping, your grocery shopping, or keeping your house clean, this wouldn't count. So it's really a more strict definition of care needs, which is linked to activities of daily living and deficiencies in performing them independently. And in Austria, this starts with a minimum of 50, no, now it's 60 hours of support needed with ADL each month. So it's already a very elevated care need, apparently. But it depends on how you conduct research. So sometimes we are a bit less strict and look at people who are approaching that stage. And also in terms of prevention, it's good to have a look at other people who are not yet eligible for our public benefits in this case.
Thank you. And now thinking about the social care system, the long-term care system in Austria, what would you say are, in your view, the three top priorities for policy?
Well, I think it's a difficult time right now. Like in other countries, we are living through a period of fiscal austerity. I still think that we need to expand funding for the system. We won't get around it. And in Austria, we still have a very decentralized system with many competencies lying with the states, and it might be helpful to centralize a bit more some of these responsibilities, to have common standards in quality assurance, similar levels of co-payments of clients who live in different provinces. This is a small country we're living in, so we should have more, a bit more uniform ways to deal with things. But most of all, I think we are on a good way. We expanded our infrastructures. There's more available in terms of home care services. We still spend much of our budget on residential care, so we should try, and the government tries to spend more on home care to avoid institutionalization, which is the most costly type of care you can get. So strengthen home care, strengthen support to informal caregivers. That's our own research focus, because I think that's an issue today, and it's an issue which will gain an importance in the next 10 or 20 years, because more caregivers will be employed and will have to combine informal care and work, and so we need more support services and more attention when it comes to the needs of this group.
Great. So now imagine you had a magic wand and you could introduce one policy in Austria in the area of long-term care. Which one would it be?
Very hard to tell. well, since this is my personal research interest, I would strongly encourage to improve services for informal caregivers. But yes, there are other policy priorities. We still need more services between home care and residential care, so more options for daycare and night care, and try to really invest more money and come up with clever solutions for these types of care. I think that would be a good investment. So if I just had 1 million to spend, I probably would spend good parts of this amount of money for developing the breadth of services or the spectrum of services.
Great. So that's in terms of policy priorities. If we thought now in terms of research priorities,
okay.
What do you think is the outstanding piece of research that needs to be carried out in the context of the Austrian long-term care system?
Yeah, well, we have less data available than in other countries, unfortunately. This is a small country, so you're limited in what you can do. There's a good body of research trying to estimate the future cost of long-term care, so everybody knows it's getting to be more expensive. I'm quite confident with this type of research. I'm less confident about research on quality issues, on the take-up of care, and again on how informal caregivers are doing. And in our country, the last survey of informal caregivers is 10 years old. In our microcensus in 2002, we had the last systematic investigation into the situation of caregivers. There's another report, but a smaller scale report, which followed. But I think we should do more there because there are more people being at risk of having to provide care while still being in employment, and we have older people with their own health needs which also provide care and which are no longer in working age, but which may face very difficult conditions and which are already co-clients. And I think we need to devote more attention to these people because more than 80% of those who are depending on long-term care about 80% receive care from a family member. 80% of those who live in their private house, in a private household. So this is the biggest share of care which is being provided in an unpaid manner. So we should look after those caregivers.
So now I wanted to finish with asking you 5 quick questions.
Another 5.
But these are quick questions where I ask you to rate the Austrian long-term care system in terms of different dimensions of performance, you could say, perhaps. The first one is about how much of a policy priority you think the long-term care system is in Austria. And so 1 would be the bottom of the scale, the worst state, and 10 would be the top.
Okay. We are not at top, but on a good way, so I give it a 7 or 8 even, but there's room for improvement left. Okay.
And feel free to, if you want to expand slightly on the number, that's absolutely fine. So the second one is about public awareness. So, people, the general population, how well do you think they understand how the long-term care system in Austria works and what it's got to offer to them where they do need it?
I think they have a very good understanding of the issue. But not maybe of specific services. Maybe another 6 to 7,
Great. So now thinking in terms of the consequences, so how well do you think the needs of people with long-term care needs in Austria are being met?
I think you have a good chance of getting the service once you need it. Maybe it might not be always, the services might not always be delivered in a way you would want them to be. But overall, again, a 7 to 8 with a focus on those who are already eligible for services. And we have a certain threshold there. And for those who don't meet that threshold, it's more difficult.
What about the needs of carers?
I feel there's more to do there, so I only rate it at 4 to 5.
Thank you.
There are services, but they are not being taken up, and there are certain policies which are not yet available, like longer care leave policies, for example, or support of working carers.
And now finally, the last one is about the coordination between health and social care, or the different components of the health and social care system that provide support for people with long-term care needs.
Yeah. Yeah, more room to integrate services. I think it's still difficult, and so I'm getting boring here, but again, it's a 6 or 7. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks.